Welcome back to the Irresistible Leadership Podcast, where we are helping leaders like you navigate the biggest change in leadership in the last 50 years. I'm Keith Turner Jr., Senior Advisor at Andrus Advisory, where I partner with churches to help pastors navigate one of the more important and challenging leadership responsibilities they carry, building healthy teams. Also lead the RightSeat hiring team, where we help churches identify and place the right leaders in the right roles. Today, I'm joined by our CEO and founder, Sheldon Andrus, where he helps organizations get clear so they can grow faster. Sheldon has spent the last 15 years helping churches build leadership teams and solve some of the staffing challenges that slow down growing organizations. Throughout this series, we've talked about when it's time to hire, how churches think about compensation, lessons from leadership culture inside Apple, and some of the common mistakes churches make in the hiring process. But when you zoom out and look at the broader landscape, something else becomes clear. Ministry staffing is changing. The expectations of leadership roles are evolving. The talent pipeline is shifting, and churches have to rethink how they structure teams and develop leaders. So today we want to step back, talk about 3 trends we're seeing in ministry staffing right now. Trends that are reshaping how cultures hire, structure their teams, and think about leadership moving forward. Sheldon, so as you think, about work within churches across the country, what are some of the shifts that you're seeing in how churches approach staffing today?
Yeah, I think as the time we're recording this, Keith, 2026, even in the first, entering into the second quarter, we are seeing in staffing, especially in ministry staffing, I don't think a lot of us were ready for some of the shifts that are coming, but they're coming faster. Now, why they're coming faster, that's a larger conversation, socioeconomically, culturally, obviously. Again, if you're watching this in the time in which it's recorded, there's a lot of different financial factors, and I think, hear me, ministry does not depend on the world's economy, because God takes care of that.
Sure.
However, there are absolutely real needs that we have to meet as it comes to staffing and payroll and benefits that are real. And I think because of that, churches who do carry a staff load are thinking about staffing in some different trends. And I definitely want to make sure that our community, our leadership community that is a part of the Irresistible fam, are aware of those. And so if you're a pastor, if you're a leader in this conversation, I invite you to lean in. Not all of this is going to be applicable for you because, we help churches of all sizes, from 60 to 15,000 and larger.
Right.
And so, hear me, some of this can be aspirational for you. Some of this can be take the meat, spit out the bones. But I'm hoping that in this trends forecast conversation, that there's a bit of prophetic fire in you of like, okay, good. I think I just want to make sure that as we grow and as I hire staff and manage my staff, that I'm aware of those options and those trends, so that I'm not looking up in 3 to 5 years and realizing, man, we didn't take advantage of some of those real key things that are happening in our culture. So I'm excited to get into this conversation. So three things that are trending in staff hiring, ministry staff hiring. Okay, here's the first one. That is the rise of operational leadership. Now, it's not new. This is not a new one, right? So operational leaders in ministry look a lot like CFOs, executive pastors, chief operations officers. It depends on your context and your ministry. Now, this all has historic founding and grounding in the previous generation's church of an associate pastor or an assistant pastor, where there was a clear number 2 that was pulled upon to help the ministry load. Well, church operation has become increasingly complex with staffing, HR, benefits, payroll, facilities, finance, grants and funding, staffing, hiring. Pastors are now more CEO than they've ever had to be.
Absolutely.
So now they absolutely need to bring on really, really qualified second level, we call them second seat leaders here at Andrus Advisory, second seat leaders. Now, here's the shift, because you're like, well, yeah, Sheldon, that's not new. The shift is historically over the last maybe 15 years, the idea of an executive pastor or number 2 who's strictly operational. Ministry in their heart, but operational in their execution has been somewhat reserved for churches above the 500 mark, right? Churches at 500, 600, they're like, hey, we need an executive pastor. And it's an obvious financial decision. It's an obvious financial decision and structural decision for them. The forecast is showing that reality of needing executive function in the highest level of the church to complement the pastor's gifting is now being found in churches smaller. So churches of 150 to 200 are looking to have executive pastors. Now, originally in years ago, just a few, that was considered very grand for a church of 150. It's like, why do you have an executive pastor? Why can't your church handle it? But here's the deal. Now, a church of 150, let's just say a church of 150 that's currently still portable. While on its surface sounds very simple and, oh, you should be able to absolutely execute that. But the complexity now around portable church has increased. The complexity around the relationship between the church and the venue that they're meeting in, be it especially if it's a school or a school district, and the rules and regulations and the contract negotiations that exist around that. Watch this, the load in and set up team that has to make that happen every week. It's far more, it's becoming far more complex, and pastors are finding that they need operational leadership. Now, here is the tension that you and I sit in as we navigate this with churches. Executive leadership and executive operational roles are not cheap.
Not at all.
And so they're causing churches to have to think strategically about their expenses and ensuring that their hiring ratio, the amount of money that they budget for staffing, is kept between 30 and 35%, which means they're foregoing more junior level ministry roles, knowing that with the intentionality that the operational leadership will help to lift the load of development of volunteer and servant leaders. And so obviously this is one of the ones that I think is really interesting to watch as we see the appetite and the culture around executive pastors grow. Here's a couple of thoughts that I just have as because I spend my entire day in this space. And that is, as of right now in America, especially in the American church, there is no universal standard for an executive pastor, right? In America, for the longest time, there's been a general standard for pastoring, right? It is the idea of some entry-level degree and ministry experience. The role of the executive pastor is a very generic one right now. It comes from marketplace, it comes from ministry, it comes from secular work, it comes from non-marketplace work. And so I think if I could tail or trail this trend, it is to say that there is a rise of certification coming to that space, right? To ensure that when we say the phrase executive pastor as the Church of Jesus, that those men and women of God have a baseline skill set and competency that is transferable between churches. And so I'm just extrapolating out this idea of where it's coming from. But I think the rise of operational leadership is absolutely one key indicator, key trend I think churches are interested in, and we're helping them navigate in this season.
Yeah, and I'm glad you touched on the fact that it is a broad spectrum because, I remember, when I was first hearing about executive pastors, right, growing up in my old school Baptist church, right, there was no executive pastors whatsoever, right? The lead pastor did almost everything, right? And then when I started hearing about executive pastors, it was more so the financial side, right? They were handling a lot of the finances, trying to grow revenue and all of that. But to now see where there's some who do that, but then they do other things way better, right? To where they're not necessarily having to dive much into the finance world. It's really a very wide spectrum. But I think what you touched on is very important is that, churches have to be able to decipher if they are in the space where they know they need one, is like, which one do we actually need, right? What does our culture actually need? And so, okay, that's trend one.
Trend number one.
Trend two, let's talk about some fractional leadership.
Oh, this is good. Okay, so you looked at my notes. I love when you do that. So number two, trend number two, is this idea of fractional leadership. Now, you remember the pandemic really well, the totally remote ecosystem, right? When it proved a lot of things to us, both healthy and unhealthy. But one of the healthy things it proved to us is that there is, when managed well, and expectations are clear and communication is incredibly well maintained, there's a lot of benefit that you can have as a leader having a virtual relationship with a person who's really good at a thing. Now, let me caveat this by saying ministry will never be virtual.
Right.
AI will never replace human touch.
Cannot.
Right? When my parent dies, that my pastor's hug cannot be replaced.
That's
that
it.
prayer,
That's it.
their presence in the hospital.
Right.
I don't care how many robots, I don't care how good you emulate human condition, you can never replace presence.
Nope.
Having said that, there is a really good opportunity right now for churches to think about this idea of, hey, we're a church of 200, 300 people, maybe 400 or 500 people. We know what an executive pastor costs. We know what a CFO costs. We know what a COO costs. However, in order to ensure that we don't go over our 30 to 35% ratio in staffing, how can we get that muscle? How can we get that muscle now? Because we want to be able to move faster.
Right.
One of the best trade-offs that I'm seeing churches take in this specific trend is they are moving into what is called fractional leadership. On its surface, it is a person who's deeply entrenched in your church, its operation, and its culture, but they exist virtually. They exist within the confines of not being physically tied or located to your space.
Got it.
They are helping you with everything. I mean, and like you said, it could be a myriad of things. It could be fractional CFO services. This is where someone remotely who's inside of your church culture, they understand your expenses, they understand your budgeting, they understand your what matters to your church. So they're not some random person, but they're helping you architect strategy and systems to give your church's mission, to give your church's money a mission, right? So they're partnering with the senior pastor and the leadership team to say, hey, how are we spending money? What's the best way to spend it? How are reserves looking? How to best allocate it to accomplish the mission of God on our church?
Yep.
You're also seeing executive pastors overseeing ministry areas, right? Fractional executive pastors overseeing ministry areas. So these are men and women of God who are meeting with your volunteer team virtually, via Zoom, via specific digital touch points throughout the week and months to help develop their leadership acumen, but also to implement and develop systems that they can operate on without them having to be on the ground involved. This is helping pastors, what we say, get out of the weeds and allow them to lead and have vision, while there's a capable number two, although virtually for the most part, helping them assess and delegate and develop their leadership tasks. Third, as we're seeing fractional operations, right? And so a lot of church operations, everything from facility management to hiring and staffing, to HR, to payroll, those things can be off-sided in a way that's healthy, as long as, again, like I said at the very beginning, as long as communication remains open, flexible, and that the expectations are clear. So what you're getting is high-level, executive-level competency and thought process and system knowledge, but for a fraction of the cost. That's why it's called fractional leadership. And so I think that's a big trend. And I think the reason I started this whole conversation off saying the pandemic is the idea is the hardest pill that I'm finding most pastors having to navigate is the virtuality of it all. It's the hey, I wish you were here in person. And I think if you're looking for the right fractional person, they are so good at their job that the physicality almost dissipates, because they become your partner in arms as it relates to your strategy partner, your execution partner, and able to build systems for you and alongside you, maybe not without you sitting in the office with them. So it's a really interesting trend we're watching, we're studying. Matter of fact, one of the things we're doing within the advisory right now is offering that service to pastors, and we've got 6 churches right now that we're working with on that level, and we are embedded in their church culture. We have email addresses at their church. No one knows that we're not there full time. People know, but you know what I'm saying. On the presentation is that we're not there full time, but we are absolutely helping them develop systems and processes and frameworks that their team can run that ensure the outcome of their church is sustainable every week.
And so, with that trend, let's dive into that just a tad bit more. So, with that being a trend for this fractional leadership, right? What's the healthiest next step beyond fractional leadership? Is that then creating that right seat?
Yeah,
because of course fractional leadership should never be the end all, right? Good enough isn't. So it may be good for a season, but hopefully God will expand. So going from a fractional leadership, type of method to a full right seat where you're then, okay, hey, let's open this position. Let's make sure we clearly define it. That's what it's sounding like, right? Okay.
Yeah, so one of the things that I have been advising clients who are exploring fractional leadership, right, is if you're going to make the investment in having a high high competency number 2 partner with you in building your church virtually, assign someone on your team who has aspirations or who you can see operating in that role in the future.
There you go.
Let them be their boots on the ground.
Yep.
And so then what you get is you almost get this apprenticeship
Yep.
of, hey, I have a fractional executive pastor, for instance, me. Hey, Sheldon works for my church, but he's leading through my ministries director right now and alongside my ministries director. So they're connecting every week. They're talking about strategy, systems. He's helping proofread and proof check and systems and quality check the ideas and the execution. But in that process, after doing that for 6, 8 months, maybe even a year, that leader now went to school in a way that they could never go to school. Which is kind of what I said in the first trend of this idea of certification or development or learning pathways for executive pastors. You're not now just hiring the fractional executive to do tasks. They are becoming a high quality development tool that's getting the work done while developing the person. So I would say the next step after fractional executive is to bring on a full-time. But watch this, you don't have to start an entire search process if you use that fractional executive pastoring relationship really well to develop a person that's already on your team.
You're stewarding what you already have.
Everything,
right? Like I love that so much because I think so many times like we see all these like open searches or open processes that, didn't necessarily have to be there if they would have just stewarded who was there before. So good. Right? So good, I love that. I love that. All right. So we went over the first two, right? Mm-hmm. So fractional leadership, we went over the rise of operational leadership. Yep. So this third one, right? Mm-hmm. Leadership roles connected to secondary revenue streams.
Okay, pastors are more CEO than they've ever had to be.
Listen,
right? They are more CEO than they ever had to be, and quite frankly, Keith, like yourself as a pastor, you didn't sign up to be a CEO. You're a shepherd. You're in the people business. You love loving on people, pastoring them, developing them, showing up in their hour of triumph, but also showing up in their hour of grief, and bringing the truth of God's word and the kingdom to those moments every opportunity you get. And now you're being confronted with P&L, balance sheets, insurance paperwork, tax liabilities, income tax, payroll tax. You've got revenue generating ventures, you got mortgages, you've got deferred maintenance. And now you're thinking, oh boy, I also want to stand in that family in their hour of grief, but I also need to go to this finance and make sure that we can pay our bills. And this is happening at churches of every size.
So it's very similar to the college football head coach now that has to deal with NIL when they didn't have to deal with it before. They now have to be a CEO.
Complex, 100%. You got to now step into a CEO role.
Yep, exactly right.
It's true, and I think we are seeing the beauty of pastors, and I know pastors get beat up all across the internet, whatever. The beauty of pastors is they don't complain. They just lean into it and they say, "Hey, Lord, if it be your will, give me grace to do it," and they just do it, right? And a lot of them are just doing it. And so this third trend, it's a complex one, but I think for a lot of pastors who are trying to figure out how to maximize, they have a vision. They have a vision in their head, and they're trying to figure out how to maximize it. And I say this every time, Pastor, if God gave you a vision, he gave you provision. It is your job to seek his face and develop your people so that you can unearth the provision. Because
gotta work it.
He did not give you a vision for something that he would not provide for. So here's the truth. We're seeing in this third trend, leadership roles or staff roles connected clearly to secondary and tertiary revenue streams. Okay, Sheldon, what are you talking about? As inflation is happening, and the cost of living is growing everywhere. Look, Keith, nothing is cheap anymore. Okay, which means in ministry, nothing is cheap.
That's right.
The same milk and eggs you buy at your grocery store,
same ones I buy,
is the same ones we buy at the church. We don't get a discount. We don't go to a discount store to get ours. Right? The same light bill you pay that's really high right now, your church's light bill is just as high. You same car insurance, all the cost of living is expensive.
It's just high.
So pastors are strategically in this season, because we know that the work of ministry has to happen. They are specifically looking for staff. They're hiring staff who are being onboarded onto their teams with the express intent that you're going to do ministry, but there's also a revenue generating line attached to your KPI. What's a KPI? A key performance indicator. This thing says, hey, there's a measurable number on your job description that says, if you're to succeed in this job, you're hitting this number. What does that look like in real life? We're seeing things like kids pastors, right? Hey, I need a really great person to oversee my kids program, but that kids pastor may also be responsible for the operation of an early learning facility or a daycare running out of the church. Or watch this, if they're not going full licensure or state or that kind of city, that kind of governmental direction to have kids in your facility, they are being tasked with running summer camps that are paid enterprises. Hear me, these are not most of the time these are enough revenue to cover that salary and not much else. But it allows you to also get that person to work week in and week out on the kids ministry of your church, right? So it's like, hey, we want to hire a kids pastor, but one of the things we're going to make them responsible for is, hey, we want an 80 kid summer camp revenue, generating this much revenue in the summer, and that helps cover or defray or decrease the cost of bringing that person on full time. And so that's built into the job description. Something else we're seeing an outreach pastor who may have oversight of grant funding, right? So a lot of churches are getting really savvy with grants, and public money, private money. It's really smart. But now they're bringing on an outreach pastor who has global oversight in their outreach ministry, but is directly responsible for the success of grant funding happening in their outreach ministry. Another place I'm seeing is a facilities director being brought on full time, but if the church has additional real estate holdings, think parsonages, rental properties, a lot of churches, especially larger churches like the ones we work with, have retirement centers and senior citizens homes and youth centers and event venues, right? That facilities director is being brought on directly to oversee the revenue lines of those and maintain those while also providing leadership around the church's facilities. And so what we're seeing is pastors, the CEO pastor is starting to think about their staffing roles increasingly more strategically. They're no longer asking, can we afford this role? They're now asking, how can this role expand our impact and be cost neutral? Right, and that is a CEO MBA level decision that I think pastors are making. But it's a trend to watch, right? Because what we're going to start seeing is churches being able to do more with less. And like, hear me, pastor, if you're leaning in this conversation, like you're thinking about, hey, what's staffing going to look like at my church over the next 1 to 2 or 3 years? I would say that of the things we're talking about, one of your hires needs to be thought about this way, no matter who they are, right? I don't care if it's music, worship, production, kids, facilities, operations, executive pastors. Hey, not only am I tasking you with developing leaders and doing the Matthew 28 work of ministry, which is to making disciples, but I'm also simultaneously, just like me, wondering how can we increase the revenue of our ministry so that we can do more ministry. Absolutely. So I think these are 3 trends that absolutely aren't going anywhere. And maybe what we'll do is we'll check in on these in a few months and say, hey, what are we seeing now that this thing is happening? I think there's other trends happening. Obviously, the rise of AI and discipleship pathways are really big right now, and how AI is helping people take a next step in their discipleship journey. AI is absolutely coming along to help us read more knowledge and insight into our church's data. So there's some trends like that, but I think all that's going to touch every part of ministry staffing. And it's just going to be a really interesting season to watch how the church and church staffs engage with AI outside of just writing copy for emails, but like, how is it helping us accomplish our tasks and ultimately impacting people's lives for the glory of God. And so three great trends. By all means, Andrus Advisory, we want to talk about all of them because we want to be on the forefront, on the cutting edge, the tip of the spear of where ministry is headed, and we want to help churches get clear so they can grow faster.
Yeah, and I mean, I think from what I'm hearing, and I think this is an encouragement to everyone, there is nothing wrong with having the ambition to want to do more for God, right? There's nothing wrong with wanting to build a team to where you can have greater impact. Sure. Greed is one thing. Of course, that's completely a separate thing. But when it comes to someone having the heart to impact not even just their community, but surrounding communities, the city, even the potentially state and nationally, because we have reach everywhere now with social media and online presence. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And we want to be a part of helping those churches do just that.
Absolutely.
So if your church is navigating a staffing decision, that's exactly why we built the RightSeat hiring team here at Andrus Advisory. RightSeat is designed to help churches do more than just post a job and hope the right candidate appears. Our team partners with churches throughout the entire process. We help you define the leadership seat your organization actually needs, recruit candidates who fit that role, and guide the entire interview and onboarding process. We also help churches navigate the salary negotiation phase, which often is one of the more difficult parts of hiring well. And unlike traditional recruiting firms, our partnership doesn't end when the candidate accepts the job. Every RightSeat placement comes with a 12-month guarantee, including a monthly check-in, coaching for the candidate to help ensure they succeed in the role. And if your church is trying to find the right leader, or trying to figure out what leadership seat you actually need, you can start a conversation with our team today at andrusadvisory.com/rightseat.